Hello and welcome to Slooh's latest Clubhouse clip. I'm Eric Edelman coming to you live from Smoky Hollow Studios at Slooh HQ in Washington, Connecticut. And tonight I'm going to be joined by Will Gator in the UK. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that's very central to all the navigation that comes around with the night sky, and it's a very interesting star, and it is the North Star. We have a lot to talk about as to how it's used just in astronomy culture, in cultural culture, in history, what's been done with it, and there's a lot to talk about. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring in Will Gator, who's joining me tonight. Welcome, Will. Thanks for joining me yesterday with the amazing Lyrid meteor shower, and today with Polaris. Lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's been a really busy week for astronomy, hasn't it? In the UK here, we've actually had a week of clear skies. So, yeah, it's pretty tiring, all this astronomy. There's so much to see.
Right. It's pretty rare, huh, at this time of year to have clear skies over there.
It's pretty rare to have clear skies. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I really am, honestly. I'm not complaining.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we've been having dreary, crazy rain over here, which is so wonderful that we have these clear skies over in the Canary Islands. They've been very consistently clear lately, which has been so wonderful. And so that's something that we can take advantage of a bunch right now. It's absolutely magnificent stuff. And so there is one tech thing that I should look into really quick. But while I'm doing that, Will, could you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at in the all sky here and how it can maybe uh, transition into sort of navigation with Polaris?
Yeah, well, I think really you put the nail on the head when you sort of said about Polaris being that object that everything's centered around, and that's certainly true in the Northern Hemisphere. Polaris marks, or at least it's very close to a point. It's very important in astronomy, and that's known as the North Celestial Pole. So the North Celestial Pole is essentially it's the point on what we call the celestial sphere, this imaginary sphere that we map the stars onto. And the North Celestial Pole is essentially where the Earth's axis of rotation intercepts that sphere, and that point is very, very close, about 40 arc minutes away from Polaris. And so what that means, well, what does it mean? It means that if you watch the night sky over the course of a few hours, you'll notice that the stars move slowly across the sky. They're rotating, or at least they appear to rotate. In fact, you just saw the live all sky image there update and saw that all the stars shifted a little bit down towards the right. Now, what's happening there is not actually the stars themselves moving, of course. What you're seeing is that the Earth is rotating underneath them. And this rotation axis, as I said earlier, that points up to the North Celestial Pole. And for us in the Northern Hemisphere, Polaris, the brightest star in the constellation of Ursa Minor, that is very close to it, as I said earlier, about 40 arc minutes. Now, for people in the Southern Hemisphere, well, they don't really have one that's that close. There's Sigma Octantis, but it's about, well, it's actually over a degree away from the southern celestial pole. That's where the bottom, if you like, the southern sort of pole meets the celestial sphere. So we're quite lucky here in the northern hemisphere, Eric, actually, to have Polaris so close to that point, that sort of axis of rotation as it is.
Yeah, and saying axis of rotation, I think that's a great transition to a really beautiful image that you shared with me earlier today that I think just so perfectly represents what it is that makes Polaris so special. And here it is, a beautiful image via Slooh astronomer Will Gator. Like this is, it's Polaris is that unique one that you can see. It's just everything around it is rotating.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see that it's not quite exactly at that sort of center of rotation. As I said, it's about 40 arc minutes, and this is the sort of picture that you can take actually with just a DSLR camera. You don't need a fancy tracking mount or anything like this. Just set the wide angle lens pointing in the direction of, well, you can see there's the plow just up by your head, or the Big Dipper in America just by your head there, Eric. Put your wide angle lens in that direction and open the shutter for 30 seconds a minute, and you will see this over time. These stars move around. And actually, what this picture is a collection of, I think it was maybe 10 or 20 2-minute exposures. And once you add them together, you really do see this motion around the North Celestial Pole. It's a beautiful, beautiful demonstration, really, a very simple demonstration of that thing that we all notice as astronomers on a clear night, is that the stars make this wonderful slow move across the sky.
And it really speaks toward the consistency of Polaris and how people have relied on it really throughout history. Like if you are sailing on the ocean, you don't have any other technology or gear with you. This will be able to tell you where you are, sort of in the north south direction. That star depends. The location of that star, its altitude depends on where you are in latitude, and so people can use that in terms of navigation and to figure out where they are in the world and where they are in terms of the cardinal directions. It's a very significant star that you can really take advantage of, and it's great in terms of setting up and training telescopes too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's I mean, I remember first learning about the Polaris, or then the North Star, when I was in Cub Scouts when I was very little, and we used that for sort of navigation, as you say. But as astronomers, we use it because it is that star that's very close to that North Celestial Pole. Now, I said earlier that the stars move slowly over the course of a few hours, or in fact, that motion you can see if you have a telescope and just point it at a star, and you'll see it drift out of the field of view. Well, if you're trying to take pictures of the stars, or perhaps you just want to have your telescope tracking the night sky, what you need to do is align your telescope pretty much only if it's an equatorial mounted telescope. You need to align it to that rotation axis of the Earth. So equatorial telescopes, basically, they have one axis, one basic sort of part of the telescope that's aligned perpendicular, not perpendicular, parallel to the axis of rotation of the Earth, and so Polaris allows you to do that, because often in the telescope you have a little tiny telescope in itself that's only job is to look at Polaris, or at least the region around Polaris, and you have a little reticule usually to align, and you can work out from different transit times of Polaris, so where Polaris will be at a very specific time. You can work out where it should be, and then align that reticule to where Polaris is in your little tiny viewing telescope that we call a polarscope. And then once you've got that all aligned, your telescope should then be perfectly aligned in parallel to the rotation axis of the Earth. What that means is that as those stars make that movement, if you move in one axis or have a motor to do that for you, then you won't need to move the telescope. It'll just follow the sky, and you can just make adjustments as you want to wander around the sky. So yeah, it's a very important star in that respect for amateur astronomers.
Oh yeah, sounds like it, and it just I mean I've just been gazing at this picture. It really brings to mind like the heart of the matter there, that it's that stationary thing which you can use to venture off into different locations, and it's been so important to us as astronomers, and in terms of understanding the rotation of our Earth. It's such a significant and telling star, and it's been used throughout history as well. Like it was something that I learned back in elementary school, that this was in the United States when slavery was an issue. Slaves that were escaping from the southern region to the northern region would use the northern star to find their location. They didn't have maps with them, but they could look up
Mm,
and they could look at the night sky and see where the North Star was, and that way they could find their direction, and that they knew they needed to go north, and this could help them go north. And so this is such a significant star on so many different levels. It has a lot
mm.
of historical and cultural significance to it, and it really a lot of fun. Do you have a preference for Polaris or the North Star? Is Are you in one camp or the other, Will?
I generally say Polaris, but that's just, I guess, what I've learned over the years. That's it. You know, the North Star, the Pole Star. All these names are. I kind of use them interchangeably, really.
Yeah, and well, one thing that's I think interesting is that Polaris it gives it more of a unique significance to it than North Star, maybe necessarily, because it won't always be the North Star, will it? And it wasn't always the North Star, and that we have a little bit of uh, and it's not necessarily true north, like you were mentioning earlier, that it's a little bit offset, and so there's this transience to it, this impermanence, and it's going to be replaced, it's going to be usurped, and it usurped another star earlier on. I believe it was a star in the constellation Draco a few thousand years ago, Thuban, which
Mm.
was the previous North Star, and there'll be another North Star after that as well.
That's right. Yeah. So if you stick around for a few thousands of years, um, your North Star, you won't have Polaris at the North Celestial Pole because of the way the Earth's axis essentially wobbles. We call it the precession of the equinoxes, which is just really a fancy name for essentially a wobble over time, a little bit like a sort of spinning plate. If you sort of very carefully drop a plate and it spins and wobbles, or maybe you had one of those little gyroscope toys that as it spins, it sort of moves around like that. If they've got a pen and it sort of moves around like that, that's what's happening to the axis of rotation of the Earth very slowly over time. So I think it's in something like, is it 12,000 years or 10,000 years? It's going to be
Oh, yeah.
quite a way away from the star Deneb, and it's going to move around. It'll be closer to Vega. So, Polaris is not always going to be the pole star. So, if you're a time traveler, particularly if you're watching this show coming back from the future, um, you know, good luck, because your amateur astronomy, you're setting up your telescope, is going to be an absolute nightmare.
Oh, they're gonna have to learn it all from square one without
I
knowing how
know.
to do it with Polaris, of course. But yeah, Polaris is so significant now because it's the North Star for us now, and it has been for thousands and thousands of years, and so it's played such an important role in lots of different cultures. And I I was just looking into recently how um, the North Star is portrayed in different cultures, and it does have a lot of significance and lore to it. The Navajo Indians actually call it, I believe, the igniter of the revolving ones. I found this one really fascinating because
Wow.
you see the Polaris, and then you see the sky rotating around it. And so it sort of speaks toward the revolving ones. But in particular, the revolving ones in this case are the Big Dipper, which is the male revolving one, and then you have Cassiopeia, which is the female revolving one. And so these two
Oh.
constellations represent a Navajo couple that, and in the center is the flame, Polaris. Polaris ignites these constellations so they can be bright and so that they can be seen. And so that's sort of how the Navajo lore deals with this central star. And there's lots of different cultures that have different interpretations of it, and it's so fascinating to read about. And then you have other cultures which are very straightforward about it, like the Japanese call the North Star Hokkyokusei, which if you segment the different meanings of the different syllables in there, you have north, and then you have polar, and then you have star. So it's
Yeah.
just it's really really directly straightforward to what you would expect when you're describing the star. And of course, yeah, we have North Star as well in English, and so
Mm.
if the North Star is something that is interesting to you, is fascinating to you, there's so much to read about it. There's lots of different cultures that interpret it in different ways, and as you know, as a clubhouse, as a community of astronomers, we'd love to hear about your own interpretations or your own uh, reactions or feelings or history with Polaris. Like if you have a story you'd like to tell us, comment in the live show section, and we'd love to have a conversation about it. Because again, these are shows are for you and for the topics that you're interested in. And we'd love to hear if you have a particular interest in this one. And of course, if you have other topics that you'd like to hear about as well, please do suggest them. And as we're talking about sort of this possibility here, of course, I'd like to welcome any new members who have potentially joined us over the last couple days from the shows. It's always a lot of fun to get a lot of new faces in the clubhouse, and so to give you a little potential tour of what you can see here. There's a lot of stuff to do, and of course, there's shows. There's going to be live shows going on all the time, and we also have lots of different things that are popping up that community members are doing. And like very recently, we had a night of discovery where everybody was just working together to look at different Herschel objects. And so this was something that a group of people were passionate about, and they went ahead and did it. And so if there's something that you have a particular passion about, let us know, let the community know, and you might find other people that are going to resonate on that same frequency, that are going to really enjoy what you want to explore in the universe. And we have a lot of tools here that can allow you to do that. So yeah, thank you for joining Slooh, or if you've been here for a while, thank you for sticking around. It's so much fun to really be able to interact with you guys all the time, and so there's lots more shows that you can expect to have here. So yeah, thank you again. And I was wondering, Will, do you have any sort of last thoughts about Polaris that you'd like to leave us with? Lots of stuff to say about this star,
Yeah.
but it resonates
Can,
with
can
everybody a little different.
can you go back to the live all sky view if you can, Eric? Because I
Oh,
think
sure, yeah. Let's.
the one thing that perhaps maybe a final thought to think about is use Polaris as that sort of pointer to not just find you the north, but maybe just find it as a way to sort of explore the night sky. Because once you find sort of the constellations Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, particularly that very bright grouping of stars that you can see just to the left of your little sort of box there, Eric, that is the plough or the Big Dipper, and that's a great staging post for exploring the sky. There you go, yeah, perfect. So you got the handle of the plough there. You can see that arcs round to that very bright star that's just in the sort of bottom third of the screen. That's the star Arcturus at the bottom of the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. You can see next to that there's a little bowl shape. That's Corona Borealis. That's a lovely constellation, and then following up along there, you've got Hercules, the keystone of Hercules up there. And then in the direction that your little hand is going, Eric, there, that's Lyra there. So that is a Vega, the bright star Vega there. And so, use Polaris, use the bright constellations around it as a staging post. That would be my sort of final thought to sort of explore the sky, because when you get into astronomy, it can be a little bit daunting. You go out there on a clear night, and particularly if you live in a very dark place, the sheer number of stars can be a little bit overwhelming. So use Polaris in the way that astronomers have used it for centuries, and as a way to get your bearings and explore the sky.
Oh, yeah, wonderful sentiment. I mean, really, Polaris is fundamental, and you can start from the fundamentals up, and it gives you such a great foundation to explore the universe, as you said. So yeah, this is one portion of the universe, and we have many more to go as we wander around the cosmos from day to day, from week to week. And so, thank you so much again for being with us, Slooh members, and we will be back very soon. So keep looking up, and thank you. This has been Eric and Will for Slooh.
Good night.